Hello everyone, I am Gavin Kostick, the literary manager of Fishamble, the new play company. If you are watching this, it is likely, although not 100% certain, but likely that you've seen the play Duck Duck Goose by Caitríona Daly. And this is a chance to meet some of the artists involved and some speakers as well to discuss the themes and issues and the art that has come up in the play. Where we are in real life is that we're midway towards the end of rehearsal period and we have the scripts to read and we have the rehearsal process underway. So it's kind of all very exciting. From your point of view, you've probably seen the play and you go, oh, right, okay, that's what happened after they talked. I'll introduce the four speakers we have today, just very briefly, and then give them a couple of questions each, and then we'll go for a general discussion. I think the honour should go to Caitríona Daly. You'll see on screen there, the name Caitríona Daly is the playwright and the author of Duck Duck Goose. Jim Culleton is the artistic director of Fishamble and also the director of the actual play, Duck Duck Goose. Joy-Tendai Kangere is an education, equity, adult learning and equity, diversity and inclusion advocate, and she holds a Bachelor of Civil Law degree from UCD Sutherland School of Law. I'll introduce her properly a little later, as I will with Charlotte McIvor, who is a senior lecturer in drama and theatre studies at the National University of Ireland, Galway, and is a co-lead in the Active Consent Programme, which I'll be asking about in a little bit. I wonder, Jim, if I could come your way first and ask you just to set a little context for us, please, because I believe the origins of this play began in a project called A Play for Ireland. I just wonder if you just step us through how we came to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Gavin, and thanks to everyone who's joined and is watching this, and thanks for watching the show, and thanks to our panelists too for being part of this discussion. I suppose, yeah, in Fishamble, we're always looking for plays that grapple with what it's like to be alive today and with the issues that are important and topics that need to be discussed. And I suppose when Fishamble was marking its 30th birthday in 2018, we called for submissions of ideas for big, brave, ambitious pieces of work, you know, with medium to large casts and work that could tour around the country and that people felt they would like to suggest to us as plays that should be seen by everyone in the country. And we ran that scheme was A Play for Ireland. It had been a sort of a development, I suppose, of a previous project we had called Tiny Plays for Ireland. And we revisited that notion and said, rather than producing 50 tiny plays, let's see, is there one big play that captures the zeitgeist of the country? We asked writers to think ambitiously, to think passionately about what they felt strongly about, something they really wanted to express through theatre. And we were delighted to spend a whole year working with 30 writers around the country in partnership with 6 theatres and art centres around the country on those projects. And one of them was, thankfully, this play, Duck Duck Goose, written by Caitríona. And we were so thrilled to develop it as part of that scheme, and just fell in love with it really, and just felt it was speaking to the heart, and it was provocative, and it was challenging and entertaining. And literally, I remember reading it like early on, and it just felt like you just wanted to turn the page to find out what happened next. And I think in rehearsals, and hopefully the people who've watched it in our audiences felt that too, that you really wanted to know what happened next. I remember, Caitríona, you said to us at the beginning that you wanted to write a play, centered around an allegation of rape and sexual assault, but that you didn't want to focus on the victim or the perpetrator. And a thought, if this is not paraphrasing it too much, a thought you had was that, hopefully and thankfully, most of us won't be in the position of either of those two people, but a lot of us might be on the borders or the outskirts of rumours and hear things, and I suppose have our loyalties challenged. And I suppose that's what the play does beautifully, is just follow the journey of the main character, Chris Quinn, as his loyalties and doubts and friendships are all tested. And I think as an audience, we hopefully sort of shift our perspective as each scene unfolds. And I love that about it, that it keeps you guessing and wondering all the way through. And hopefully it's a play that that people who watched it afterwards will talk about to each other and argue about and discuss, and will stay with them.
Great. If I bring you in there, Caitríona, if possible, and if I actually slightly unfairly, if I ask you, given that intro from Jim, can I just push it into a slightly technical area? As a playwright who's written a number of very successful plays, how did you feel about the technical opportunity of a nice ensemble play? Did you think, right, great, this is what I'm going to do with the characters? Or was it more, no, I'm dealing with themes and issues and characters, and now I'm not really thinking about theatre itself?
I think my inclination from a very young age has always been to write for large casts. So it wasn't even, it was more like, yay. and I didn't even think about the cast size too much, just purely because that's always been my kind of, my first play would have had 5 cast members in it, 5, 6 cast members. So no, it was the form certainly suited me very, very well. Absolutely.
Was it always the case that you were going to begin with Jane and Chris, i.e. the witness, not witness to the event, and the woman who's bringing the case? Did you always think, yeah, that's where I'm going to start with this too? What was the initial vision for the play? Was that the image you had to start it all, or was it more, did it come more slowly?
Well, I started writing the play the day the verdict for the Belfast rape trial was announced, because I think the person, and kind of just reiterating kind of what Jim said, the person that stuck with me most within that, having to watch that unfold for weeks, apart from the victim herself, was the guy who deleted the text messages. Because, like, how do you volunteer yourself into an allegation like that? Like, it's that to me was just baffling. Like, how do you live with yourself after that? So yeah, so I just, when I started writing it, actually the entire play took place after the trial. In the first draft, everything took place after the trial. And then by the time I finished that, I decided there was more challenge, that actually most of the drama happens previous to the trial. And I was kind of, I really wanted to get involved in what kind of conflicts there were that would bring you to that point. So,
difficult question again. As a playwright, and again for people who perhaps haven't written plays but are interested in how plays are made or whatever, or how plays come about, what's the balance for you between the imaginative world of the playwright and the characters speaking in the world of your head, and also knowing that you're dealing with subject matter which is of serious interest, and that there are certain aspects that you might feel that you have a responsibility towards, so and maybe research towards? So how do you work? What's your balance between the, I don't know, the research and confidence you have underpinning it, and the fact that actually they're just people that are talking and they just have to speak the way they speak?
Yeah, I kind of like, it's funny, I'm a stupidly passionate person. So when I decide on what I'm going to work at, I become completely consumed. So I don't really, like, I wouldn't even, like, I did a lot of research, but I didn't even consider it research. I was more just like, give it to me. Like, I have to kind of know as much as I possibly can. And again, I started writing plays when I was 10 years old. I don't really think too much about what I do. I just do it. So I'm really bad at those questions. But yeah, sorry to...
No, not at all. No, great. And we'll get back to you. Say, I just want to get everyone in for a chance. So I come to Joy-Tendai. We're all human beings. You've read the play, you've gone forward to production. I just wonder what your feeling or initial response about it as a work is when you actually read it.
So thank you so much, Gavin. Just being one thing that I've realized in living in Ireland is that Ireland is an island. It's very small. And when I did start reading it, I was taken back to the Belfast rape trial, and just, it was that's how small, things are interlinked. And really, I think it's so important for people the characters that Caitríona chose, to start off and have the spotlight. I found it very interesting because it is important. Sometimes we're so, as outsiders or people that are looking in or wanting to find out, and get justice, we are looking at the victim and the perpetrator, but we're not, the whole, that there is also a network of people that are involved in that, that there is families, there is, jobs, there is a lot of things, there is, people with vested interest, and how that whole incident plays and emerges the trauma of other people that have gone through that situation, who actually start reliving that experience as well. So that's where it took me, that it is really, there isn't a straight way of analyzing such situations. There's also, it is so intertwined, societal. It actually goes back to historical factors, on looking at things. So that's where it drew me, just a lot of going back to the basics and going back to story or experiences, because I don't want to say them stories, because there are experiences that touch people's lives, of people that would have been in similar circumstances, or would have had family members that were affected by that. So that was my starting point, and I just want to really congratulate Caitríona for that starting point, because it's needed in society. We need to see that there is a whole chain of people that are affected when it comes to such matters.
I think it's very good. And if I pick up on you saying that, it's almost like an image, forgive me, of like it's trying to eat a bowl of noodle soup with a fork, and there's so many interacting parts. It's really hard to find out its pieces, but there are pieces in there. So again, slightly unfair question is, from a public point of view, what would you, if you could, pick out as the important points that you feel that should be on the public discussion that the play is bringing forward? What are the things that you think this country needs more conversation about, of the things that are debated there?
So really, I think it's the untalked about, and this is just not pertaining to Ireland, the whole global issue behind rape culture. And I was looking and taking down notes that there is this notion that boys will be boys, locker room talk, those conversations that are not being said, and this toxic masculinity is passed on to young boys. You're a boy, you can, and no one stops in the tracks to say, what are we, what people or what generations are we creating from not stopping it, or even addressing. I'm really glad that within, education, I've been seeing that there's more drive to consent, just the knowledge of consent, because there's grown men, a lot of young boys, grown men that have never heard or don't know anything about consent. And they've gone through life, and as I said, it goes back to, boys will be boys, it's acceptable. And also the fact that at the end of the day, the victim and the person that is affected gets name called, and shamed for coming out and sharing their story or wanting to bring change. So for me, that is also the fact that it's the discrediting of people when they do come up, and then you wonder, as I said, it's not a problem that is specific only to Ireland. Growing up in Zimbabwe or everywhere else that I've lived, you get situations of this, and like I said, it's when we have public or that one strong person that comes up and says, look, this happened to me, that we have a barrage of stories of people's trauma, that people coming up and saying, look, this happened to me, this resonates with me, I know someone that this happened, and why are we not talking about it? But also, I just want to touch there, Gavin, that there is a habit. I mean, now in the era of social media and everything, there is a habit of people, once a story comes into the public forum, where there's sympathy, and then as soon as the story dies, it's like it never happened. It's back to normal, guys. Close the door. We're going to carry on with life, and the cycle starts again. So really, what I hope that people that are watching is really starting those conversations. And I always believe that we always say that there's other people responsible, but I'm a firm believer that charity starts at home. It begins at home and it ends at home. And when we have young people that are coming in and really looking into what are they saying, and if you hear, if you're a parent or a guardian and you hear a child really not addressing or diminishing a woman or whatever it is, then stop them in their tracks, because otherwise it goes on to all the other societal problems that maybe I'll discuss later, that is so intertwined. If we don't nip things in the bud, then it grows and we'll never, we might have revolutions of talking about it, another case coming up and talking about it and, feeling shame, but we need to address everything at the core.
Great. Yeah, I think, sorry, listen to what you're saying, and I feel there's one of the strong things about the play is there is a mix of men and women on stage, and there are scenes with women talking, scenes with men talking, young men, all in their 20s, and there's just a really interesting set of conversations in a way. It's quite interesting. The ripple effect you were talking about earlier is there's a core situation, and then there's a series of ripple effects that go further and different and always into places. In a sense, they're always awkward. It seems to always move towards the difficult conversations, which I think is very interesting. If I could bring in, Charlotte at that point, and again, if I just roll back a little bit, I just going to give you a chance first, Charlotte, to have a think about it as a play, a play that you read, and there it is. So, what did you make of it as a work of art?
Well, you know, as I was reflecting on what everyone has said so far, and just my own immediate reaction, I realized that it's the play that I've been waiting for 20 years. And what I mean by that is my very first weekend of college at Muhlenberg College in Allentown, Pennsylvania, we had to watch a theater education play about rape. We didn't even use language around consent at that time. And it was a plot of a high school, football player raping a sorority girl, or sorry, a college football player raping a sorority girl. And everyone sat there and laughed and said, well, that has nothing to do with me. I'm not that hyper masculine football player. I'm not, this is ridiculous. Why are we even sitting here? Theater is so stupid. And from that moment forward, I've become so interested in the relationship between theater for social change, and then what does it mean to be an activist in these kinds of spaces on these kinds of issues. So when I picked up Caitríona's play and had the privilege of reading it even prior to the show opening, I just thought, yes, because finally, that idea of dramatizing the ripple effect of these experiences, not only, as we've said already, on the survivor and the perpetrator or accused perpetrator of an action, but on the groups of friends, the way in which within the action of the play, it's not only about, did this happen or did it not happen, but the way in which the encounters between Chris Quinn and all the different people in his life, whether a woman that he goes on one date with, whether his own sister, whether his friends, come back to these kind of micro and macro aggressions that women are experiencing in everyday life, and then reflecting on their role within it. And we see so many points in the play where Chris has the opportunity to act differently, to make a different choice, and he does not. But I think also really smart within this play is that it's not just about having a go at Chris or even Davy, but helping us to understand the motivation for the actions, the social pressures, the ambivalence that they are living through. And by seeing what they're living through, we're able to leave the theater and have conversations in a different way. I mean, as well, Caitríona, you're to be commended on the really trauma-informed way in which you wrote this play, in terms of even staging how Chris is hearing or recalling, the statements from what he experiences in the conversation with Jane, down to the way in which the play, reports, I suppose, different stereotypes about, well, she didn't remember that exactly, so it couldn't have been rape, which we know is documented as a very common response of survivors of trauma. I think it's also so brave, Caitríona, that you just took on the false rape accusation, because that's the first question we get in our workshops and talkbacks in our own theater projects. And you took on that lightning rod and really pushed away at it. And by taking that straight on, you allowed us to see this incredible range of subtleties, and end the play on a cliffhanger that I will not spoil for those who maybe have not seen the play. But to me, that allowed us to really, okay, how does life go on? What does justice look like? Is it a conviction? Is it what is culpability? And I think you've given us something really powerful that I hope encourages many conversations and actions.
Great. I'm going to come back your way in a sec, Charlotte, but from what you said, I'm going to push a question Jim's way. Because to my mind, Jim, in reading the play, it's a very clean play, as in the scenes are clean and clear, and they're very performable, really vibrant characters. You keep meeting new characters of interest, and yet it's a memory play in which the mind is starting to break down, and there's a lack of certainty at key moments as to the relationship between memory and this is what happened. How's it going in rehearsal? How are you doing with the tricky bits that are trying to make sure the audience fully understands this is not quite exactly what happened?
Yeah, no, it's kind of head-wrecking in a fantastic way, because as you say, what Caitríona, you've done is write a play in 9 scenes where every scene progresses the story. Every scene shifts and changes our perspective on what we think. Every scene allows us to see things a little bit differently and query what we had thought previously, which is fantastic. And as you say, then also Chris, of course, if people have seen the play, is remembering things and conjuring up memories and going into painful memories, and he's kind of haunted by images of Jane and of other characters. So he kind of we were talking to Jane Rehearsals, it's kind of like going down the street and tapping someone on the shoulder and they turn around and it's not the person you thought it was. Like, he keeps thinking that new people he meets remind him of other key people in the story. So we're trying to just tease out in rehearsals, when those moments are, what sparks them off, how does he get out of them, how does he get in them, do the other characters know they're in his memories? A little bit like Inception or something at times here in rehearsals, trying to work out who's aware of those memories and how we get in and out of them, really. So it's a really it's an exciting time in rehearsals. Like we're at the beginning of the third week of rehearsals, so kind of coming up to 2/3 through it, I suppose. So we're up on the floor here, and you can see the rehearsal studio here in Dan's house behind us. And working out the practicalities. We've had so many discussions in rehearsals about, you know, what people have done, what happened in the room. Of course, that's one of the great things about the play, that nobody apart from the two people in the room really know what happened, and they have different versions of events. But what the other characters think and teasing out, you know, the kind of the motivations through the whole play has been great fun so far. And now we're up on the floor and moving things around. So you can see there's some boxes there. You know, Paul Keoghan is our designer. He's got these kind of filing boxes that create tables and sofas and various things that we need in the play. But there's a sense that somehow Chris is kind of, you know, taking memories out of boxes and filing his thoughts away and moving those around. Yeah, they have a kind of, I suppose, echoes of legal boxes for the court case as well. And we're, you know, in discussions with Salo O'Halloran, our costume designer, you know, about whether Jane, you know, the actor Caitríona playing Jane or John playing Leo, they kind of morph into other characters. They're kind of slightly shapeshifter kind of characters. So we're just teasing out getting the balance right between them becoming different characters, but at the same time being versions of the one person in Chris's mind, and how we're going to use all the staging and design elements to kind of bring the audience inside the way Chris views the world and his view of things. So by now we'll have, when people see this, that will have all been decided and done, and hopefully people will think we've done it well. But at the moment, that's what we're grappling with and still working out.
Great. And if I bring back to Charlotte for a sec, because you use a very interesting phrase there, socially engaged drama, and you were involved in the active consent program. I wonder, would you tease out for us for a moment, again, like people watching this, they go to theatre, they might be enjoying this, I hope you enjoyed the play, all that kind of thing. The phrase socially engaged drama, in case people haven't come across it, a little bit about that, please, would be great. And to what extent is the active consent program relates to that, or is that no, the active consent program is a much larger and separate thing?
Well, I suppose to start with that question, you know, and I found myself thinking about, you know, Caitríona's play on its own, and then as part of what I think is a wider cultural movement and a lot of momentum within Irish culture at the moment, post the marriage equality referendum, post the repeal movement, in terms of very concrete actions recently taken by the Departments of Justice, of higher education, in terms of activity and new policies or frameworks around consent, around supporting victims of sexual assault and rape as they go to trial, and so on. So her play is already taking place within this larger context within Irish society, where there's a lot of action at government level, and of course ongoing from NGOs, rape crisis centers, and a program like is ours, but there's still a lot to do. And it's a bit strange that as a drama and theater studies lecturer, I'm one of the co-leads of the active consent program, which is a project where we go out and we do research on sexual attitudes and behaviors of young people 15 to 25, design interventions like workshop. There's a play that we toured colleges with in 2019, 2020 that we'll be releasing as a theatrical film this year. We also have created several e-learning modules on critical sexual media and sexual violence and harassment. So we do research about the thing, design interventions in order to work at the gray areas or complexities that come up out of the research, evaluate the thing that we make, and then start the whole cycle again. And really, we believe within our program that it's not just about research. It's not just about one play or two plays or 10 plays. It's not just about a social media campaign. It's not just about policy agitation. It's about trying to bring all of that together constantly working on those different levels and those different ways. So what we see ourselves doing is in partnership with government, with the wider rape crisis and NGO sector in this conversation that we're having with you today, because one conversation, one play, one statistic is not going to accomplish the work that we need to do together. But the clarity of vision in a play like Caitríona's both is an incredibly enjoyable aesthetic experience, but I think incredibly urgent in terms of continuing to power the dynamics that I've described there. Great,
thank you very much for that. Great. I would like to come back to Joy-Tendai, if only briefly. Just in your reply earlier, you said there was something else you'd like to talk about, and I sort of caught the edge of it. Was there some aspect of the play that you would like to bring forward at this stage?
So I was just talking about societal behaviors in terms of what Charlotte has mentioned, and it's really, you know, how do we create positive change, whether it's in consent, whether it's in racial equity, social equity, and all that. And that is whole really interlinked, that if we do not address the systems or the ideologies that create, it's like if someone, passes on a racial slur and, it's laughed about and it's called banter. I'm reminded, I think it was Dave, I think Davey in scene 5 where, they're in the pub and he really, it starts hitting the point that, normally random men on the street would high five him, for all that has been reported. And it's not it. And that's the mentality that all these facets are connected, because if somebody is hurt by the way that, they are viewed in society, and people say, no, it was banter, you're taking it seriously. Or if a woman is, allegedly, assaulted, or, it really states the point that she's been assaulted, and then you start denigrating her and calling her a nut job or a nutter, what is that saying? And this is all these things that need to be addressing. So in your play, Caitríona, in realizing, in bringing out this, the sexual assault and everything that is there, there's other issues that people resonate in, that, they would have been denied, or told that they were making up this situation. So, in as much as we're addressing one issue, there's other issues. So I think different people who would watch the play, it would actually resonate with that where a real experience is denied or people make fun of it, it does have lasting effects on people.
Great. I'll come to Caitríona. I'm aware, viewers, we've got 25 minutes, so I don't want to take too much time from everyone as we go. So we might be rounding up towards the end. And if anyone has around the group, I think I need to say the following, or pick on the following field too. But I will come over to Caitríona. The great Conal Morrison, soon to be directing for Fishamble, a show called The Trizzy. He said in my presence once, in actual words, in an actual sentence, that he thought the theatre was a place where taboo things could be said safely, which I thought was an interesting remark, and I've used it since. Based on what you were saying earlier about going, I don't necessarily think about that or not, I mean, and based on the discussion you're hearing now, do you see yourself as someone who's moving theatre to have a conversation in public where we can talk about things that are pretty taboo or would be in another circumstance, in the pub or in the bar or whatever, but we can do this and have this discussion? Or is it not quite like that for you?
No, I think that's definitely fair. I think I did that with my last play slightly as well with Normal. I'm very bad. I'm a very upfront person, and I'm very bad with contrived language and pretending that things are a different way from what they are. And I suppose a lot of what I write probably comes out of frustrations of people saying one thing just to keep things comfortable. That really bugs me. And I know from a couple of experiences I had during, and I don't mean to keep bringing it back to the Belfast rape trial, because the play is very different, I mean, there's certain similarities, but it's really not all about that. But I know around that trial was so publicized in our lives for 2 months, and I was working in an office at the time, and I was having to have these very strange conversations with people, and I found it really frustrating, just in terms of stuff that people would excuse and kind of let go by the wayside. And ultimately, I think, going back to that again, and I think I'm not really sure this is answering your question anymore, but I'm trying. Yeah. I think because we all saw the text messages with that case, we knew they were scumbags, like ultimately from what their text messages had said. So I think it made, I suppose I found myself having a lot of conversations with people who, despite having seen all of these reams of text messages, were still able to say to me that they thought that they were innocent. And that's not to say that they weren't, but that's not my place to say. Mm-hmm. But I suppose it was the ability to excuse the language and to dismiss it as not being that big of a deal or a red flag.
Slightly linked or related to that, and perhaps, I mean, again, sorry, Jim, you might come on this, is that the joy of Fishamble, in a way, is that we now have a sequence of works from a sequence of writers. And so from our production perspective, you might use this for a number of plays, but one of them might be Rathmines Road. And yet what this play brings for Caitríona, in terms of what you just talked about, is plus, in the age of anxiety about social media and the way that people who are nice, decent human beings that you meet in the street put things online, that it seems very at odds with what they would say to you in conversation. So you've got, and also the constant recording and reportage of what people are saying. So there's the levels of anxiety within the world of the play. Maybe I'll make it simple for you, Jim, if you don't mind. Design-wise, how did you go about incorporating that notion of there's the private conversation being had, and yet somehow this is not a private conversation, there is continuous commentary?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's one of the great things about the play that it's as much about, social media and the impact of how people talk about things and how rumors spread and how people base opinions on things they've heard that might not be backed up by facts, or maybe are backed up by facts. I think that's really fascinating. There's a whole thread of that through the whole play. And I think, in terms of design, we're using projections. We're kind of going to show kind of, some of the social media comments and some of the WhatsApp messages that are kind of crucial to the story of the play that are used and mentioned throughout the play. But then the characters kind of challenge those and reassess those and confront kind of people's assumptions about those in a really, really interesting way. I think that's very kind of rich and complex, and really adds to the kind of how the play, I suppose, looks at that as part of modern living. I suppose that people's opinions are informed by all sorts of things, and that one comment on social media can have a huge impact, whether it's based on something true or not.
Okay, and I'll go last one for Caitríona, if you don't mind. If we move to a more emotional issue, in a sense, in that here we are, week 3 of rehearsal, sort of emotional and professional, as in, again, for people who might not know, as a playwright, do you feel your job is done at this point, that they are producing the play and they get on with this? Or in terms of where we're at, do you feel that you as an artist have more impact to come? In other words, do you come and see runs? Will you be talking to Jim about the production? How is, and are you looking forward to opening night?
Yeah, like I suppose like I'm in a very lucky position. I wholeheartedly trust Jim, so I don't really think I'm getting too involved, but I'm popping in the odd time and having a look and having a, I suppose when you are dealing with something that's as sensitive as this, and we're very aware the line that we're skating within it, I just want to make sure that that's done as responsibly as possible, which Jim is absolutely playing a blinder at. And also, I do think, you can't really write this play and not have conversations with people about it afterwards. I think that's a really important part of it all, and it's something I'm definitely looking forward to. I hope they're all, constructive conversations. It's always a fear, but no, I'm really just eager to see what people think, and to hear their own conclusions within it. I think that's what's really exciting me about the runs and going on tour, and it's I'm really excited about it.
If I could just chip in and add to that, actually, Gavin, if you don't mind, just to say, like, Caitríona is an example of like a wonderful playwright that is like has a very strong sense of vision, absolutely knows what she's writing about and what she wants to say, but also so collaborative and so trusting. So, thank you for trusting us. And we've got a fantastic cast of actors too, that are just, that care about the play so much and really want to do it justice. And so I think that coming in and out and watching rehearsals and seeing run-throughs seems great. And also just say a quick word of thanks to all our partners on it as well, to the Arts Council for funding the touring of it, also to the venues, to the Pavilion Theatre, Dreacht, to the Everyman, to the Watergate, the Bell Table and the Lyric Theatre, and to Dublin Theatre Festival, and also to the Galway Town Hall that was involved in the original development process. It's been really, I suppose trying to tour work of large scale around the country is challenging, especially during COVID times, and we've already postponed the production for a year, and I'm so looking forward to being out on tour with it in the next few weeks.
Great. Charlotte, do you have a thought there?
Yeah, I just wanted to end, or my contribution anyway, with a couple numbers and then something people can do if they end up having these conversations or being in touch with someone in their real lives. So the play is set in Galway. Our colleagues at the Galway Rape Crisis Centre last year reported that they had 323 clients, 3,849 appointments, and 8,347 calls, voicemails, or texts to their service. and that's Galway alone. In our sexual experiences survey, which was with the Union of Students in Ireland in active consent, of 6,000 students, 28% had experienced non-consensual vaginal, oral, or anal penetration. Those numbers are huge. This has touched our lives in some way, as Caitríona's play showed, and we'll link to some tips that we've developed along with the Galway Rape Crisis Centre and Union of Students in Ireland in our program for how to support somebody if they disclose an incident of sexual violence to you, who to get in touch with, and how to help.
Great. I'll come your way, Joy-Tendai, in a sec. I'll just give you a moment to think. But if Charlotte, to end this, well, as you brought there, would you care to repeat a simple website for people to go to as an initial thing? And similarly, Joy-Tendai, if there's something, the resource that you think people should be, who are interested in any aspect to do with the play, are there some websites you say, go and have a look at that website, just to even start thinking about these things? So Charlotte first.
So you can support a friend who discloses to you by going to www.nuigalway.ie/active consent /start-here, and you can access our do's and don'ts for supporting a disclosure.
So Galway and active consent are the keywords to listen out for. Joy-Tendai, so any website you point towards.
So just to, in terms of awareness, that since February 2021, it's now Coco's law is now in effect, and just the fact that it is now illegal to record, publish, or distribute any personal images of someone without their consent. And so it is important that we know that this is now under legislative order, and that if you do that, there is actually a penalty of up to 7 years in jail. So it is really important that that awareness is out there. And thank you so much, Gavin, and everyone, for giving me the time to say that.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. It makes you proud to work with Fishamble and the work that we do in terms of theatres and bring in discussions. We are www.fishamble.com. Dr Goose may well have been on tour, or will be on tour, even as you watch this. Go and watch it, and there might be live streams and other versions of it in the future, so please do keep an eye out. And we will be producing more work into the autumn with The Treaty by Colin Murphy, directed by Colin Morrison. So lots of dramas come this year. It's great to be back. Thank you all very much for your time. Thank you to our panel, Joy-Tendai, Charlotte, Caitríona, and Jim. Thank you very much indeed. Bye all.
Thanks. Bye everyone. Thank you very much.